Quickly, I want to know who was involved in sports when they were young? Well, there we go. Which one of you guys also have your kids involved in sports? You know, great time to change and inspire kids. And really, at the end, some of the things they build through their experience in sports. And probably one of the reasons you're here also, not just in this room, but as leading people in changing this country is because of all the skills we've learned in being involved in sports, teamwork, learning to lose and win, and being humble in our victories, and also creating an environment where everybody could win around us. So my only other point as a coach, and I'm going to come back to the panel on a few things. At the end, coaches make impossible possible. And if you watch the Olympics the last 10 days, and they create smiles. They create smiles. And it's pretty cool. I want to talk to you, I want to read you a few statistics before we get into the questions, and I introduce you to these people. Kids today are in front of the TVs about 8 hours a day. TV, computers, cell phones, 8 hours a day. We know the trend of inactivity is increasing. It's not decreasing. And Dr. Dean here was going to talk to you about it a bit. We know that this year alone, the value of medical care for obesity is close to $20 billion in Canada. I'm not sure we could sustain the type of country we want in terms of a leading society, but also a dynamic society if we don't do something about it. And I do strongly believe that the message of this great nation needs to come from the top down, that the vision needs to be created on the top, and people like us here will go out of the way. Your NSOs, your sporting organization, will go out and make it happen. But we need a national vision on what's possible in health and active living. Not just sport, active living, walking after dinner, taking the stairs instead of... Also, the other question, is it the government's role to take a proactive role in a healthy Canadian? You know, it's a good question. What's the true social cost of inactivity? Dr. Dean's going to talk about it a bit. And I think the last point here, some of the points we're going to talk to you about is physical literacy. And what does physical literacy mean? It's a simple point. It means the ability to learn to read and count with mom and dad. So it's being active and the ability to be active with great coaches at the base level. And Dr. Dean is one of the best in the country on this, speak around the world on it, and we're going to have a nice discussion on it. So here's our panel. 20 Olympics and Paralympics medals we have sitting here. 20.
Damn, how many do you have?
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Being the swim coach, I'm proud of Benoit. At the last Paralympic Games, he led our national team, just not only by his performance, but also by his leadership. It was really cool. And it's fun to have you on our team, Ben. Jennifer Heil happened to be a swimmer to start with, too.
It's true.
There we go, great. Jennifer Heil, not only is she a gold medalist and a silver medalist, and an amazing speaker in Sochi the last 10 days. Just got home, is taking care of her 9-month-old now. She's also a great humanitarian and started a program called Because I'm a Girl. And you've reached close to $1 million. Have you reached $1 million?
Over $1 million now.
Reached $1 million raised because I'm a girl. Dr. Dean here is a professor at University of Manitoba in kinesiology and physical therapy. He's a leading thinker in physical literacy, and he's living at home of our Olympic gold curling women in Manitoba. And it's great to have you here. Does a lot of work with Le Cirque du Soleil, the world-leading circus in the world. And I think we have to look at these great things in Canada. We have some of the best in the world. We always often look over our shoulders, and they're just in our backyard. So thanks for your work. Benoit Huot. Benoit Huot est un Paralympien, 4 Paralympiques.
Yeah, 4 times.
4 Paralympiques, 9 médailles d'or aux Jeux Paralympiques. Athlète de l'année au Québec. 10 autres médailles d'argent et de bronze. Un grand leader et un grand promoteur du sport, tout sport, pas juste paralympien, mais aussi ton rêve, c'est d'inspirer la prochaine génération pour être actif.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we've got David Arsenault here. You know, great things happen with great minds. And David Arsenault started a program called Athletics Community Center. David is a national team member in Taekwondo, father of 2 kids, but also builds grassroots program around schools around the country here. So, you know what? It's great to have you 4 here. We've got some neat chat on what could be done. We'll hopefully have enough time to open it to questions in a bit. But welcome to Montreal, and thanks for taking time away from your busy schedule. And you know what? After the Olympics, after what we've seen and what we're going to see tomorrow at 7 a.m., and I live in Ontario, and the bars are open in Ontario at 7 a.m., so I'll have to go to late Mass instead of early Mass. But the media is filled, and Dr. Dean here, the media is filled with negative stories about how kids are not active, what they don't do. They watch too much TV. Talk to us a little bit about it. What's your perspective as a physiologist and a scientist in that field?
Well, it's really important to understand that this didn't happen overnight. Yeah, it just didn't happen overnight. We had some very serious changes in our psychology. You know, I'm a physiologist, and we study how the body functions. This part right up here is your brain, and it's really our decisions we make as Canadians that changes our behaviors, and it's our decisions that count. Even though I'm a physiologist, it's all about psychology. Canadians in this room all want their health care. If I get sick, get me to the hospital and fix me. But we have spoken as a nation that we don't want our health. We do want our health care, but we don't want our health. And since 1970, even before that, we've seen a very slow, insidious change in our culture where we devalue being physically active. We live in a society that's just in time, a Facebook society, where it's very difficult to get out and do things because we're clamped to a screen all the time. We barely can put our cell phones down. I'm already shaking because it's about a block away over there. And it's like, where's my cell phone? In the end of the day, I brought one simple slide for you to take a look at to set the stage for this discussion. And I'm just going to click you through that and talk you through what we found so you understand where Canadians are at this stage. That graph right there shows you obesity in Canada since about the Munich Olympics, 1972, to current. And if you look at that graph, it clearly shows you that obesity, which is defined as too much fat mass for your body, that's the highest level of too much fat mass for your body, has increased, you can see, perfectly linear from 1970 to now. It's this beautiful straight line. You know what I've done? I've color-coded liberal and conservative governments on top of that using the appropriate color codes. And in this room, you imagine the next block being red. And I'm going to tell you, we need to take this value and not just cap it off at the value that it's at. We have to reverse it back down to 9%. This is a serious train that we don't just have to stop, but we have to reverse. So I implore you to think about health of Canadians into the next election and really not just health care, but the health of Canadians. It is vital to do so, and I'll show you some facts. Here's smoking in Canada. Smoking in Canada with billions of dollars of revenue has reduced a modicum to 17% from about 25% a decade ago. It took billions of dollars in investment in order to do that, and serious legislation. Can't smoke in your car with a kid in the car. Can't smoke inside anymore, etc. And we're going to have to do more legislation to make this go further. Interesting enough, physical inactivity now surpasses smoking as the leading cause of death in Canada. Physical inactivity. So here's the facts. Currently, if you look at the slide, you're going to see that 85% of adults in Canada are sedentary, not meeting the physical activity guidelines. 50% of children are not. And the interesting thing is, you get a growth spurt about age 12, 50% of kids under the age of 12 are active. You get your growth spurt, you drop down to 7% of children meeting the activity guidelines in Canada. 7%. That's when your skeletal mass is growing. You think Osteoporosis Society of Canada has a problem? Wait and see. Here's the projections, guys. 2025. That's 2 elections future. Obesity is going to increase to 32% from 27 right now. The number of people with diabetes is going to go from 2.5 million to 3.7 million. 1 in 3 Canadians will be affected by type 2 diabetes, lifestyle induced. Total knee replacements, right now, total knee replacements in our hospitals in Canada, 50,000 a year, 80% of them due to obesity, 80%. We're going to increase to 68,000 a year. Those are just 2 of the 42 different conditions that are related to inactivity of our culture. Here's the costs. The Kruger Group calculates the costs, total costs of physical inactivity, obesity, and smoking in Canada. And right now, it's $3 billion total costs, direct, indirect, healthcare, absenteeism, loss of productivity, all of them counted. $3 billion per million Canadians right now. That costs us $103 billion a year as Canadians. Lost money, lost revenue. By 2025, with the current projections, and these are conservative estimates, $5.8 billion per million Canadians. We're going to spend over $200 billion a year dealing with these issues. And that's going to be a big millstone, a big debt millstone hidden around our necks. We need a government that's going to actually act on this with investment, serious investment into the health of Canadians. I dare say we've got a covered life course, but I want our next future generation of kids to not bear this load. And I think you need to understand these issues, and that's why this conversation today is happening. That's my last slide and my last bit of information. Thank you.
I told them to applaud.
Oh, thank you. Sciencey, sorry.
Yeah. So what does it mean? What do you guys, when you see this, what does it mean, Jennifer?
Well, I'm saddened by this. I love our nation. I've had the privilege to compete and represent Canada around the world, and I love our country. And when I see these statistics, they're absolutely alarming. And I'm a new mom. I have a 9-month-old son. And thank you. I need the applause today. It's been a long day already. And when I see him, and I understand what it is to feel that love for a child. And I don't think there's any parent out there who doesn't want their kid to be inactive. And you know, the fact that this is widespread, it means that there's a lot of other issues going on. And so even though I'm saddened and I find this alarming, it spurs me into action. I want to be involved in this because it is so important for our entire country. But I'm optimistic at the same time. And that's because the solution to stopping the train, as you said, Dr. Dean, and reversing it, it's simple. It's actually really simple, and it's called physical activity. And so when we look at these statistics, they can be very overwhelming, but we know that with a simple solution and a coordinated effort that we can stop and reverse that train, and so I find that exciting at the same time.
And Benoit, you know, you're a para-athlete, and it's even more crucial for children with disabilities to get involved, you know, in terms of to build confidence and be part of things, you know. So qu'est-ce que tu vois dans ça, toi?
Yeah, well, I've been very lucky to have a great family and great structure around me, even though I had a small disability. I was born with a clubfoot, and that gave me the opportunity to compete and representing our great country at 4 Paralympic Games. And you know, what I found and where I'm very lucky, and this is something that I'm hoping to do my whole life, is make it a priority. Like I said, I had the chance to have great people around me to give me this chance, even though I was different. But something that I'll say it in French, it's easier. Alors, je vais le faire comme mon cheval de bataille. C'est super important pour moi de le faire et d'éduquer les gens sur l'importance de l'activité physique. Vous savez, nos jeunes, la prochaine génération, dans le fond, nos jeunes, c'est certains qui n'ont pas nécessairement la chance d'avoir au quotidien de comprendre l'importance de faire du sport et de l'activité physique, mais c'est important de leur dire. Alors moi, ce que je fais, puis je m'en souviens parce que quand j'étais jeune, je me souviens d'avoir eu one of your inspirations, Jean-Luc Brassard came to my school and I got inspired by him. I got very inspired and something that I do every day is going now myself into schools and talk to them. Alors, en tant que gouvernement, en tant que pays, c'est important d'en faire une priorité. En faire une priorité aujourd'hui et de créer, d'une certaine façon, des programmes pour qu'on puisse avoir une meilleure communauté, un meilleur pays, puis désengorger sur le long terme, parce qu'on ne voit pas ces résultats malheureusement sur le court terme, mais désengorger notre système de santé simplement, our health system. If we think about long term, we will benefit from this. And this is something that I'll do my whole life. And as a para-athlete, as someone with a disability, I was always, like I said, I've been lucky in my life, but I was always afraid to face somehow a struggling situation where I would have a difficulty to integrate myself. I think we live in a great country, and people with a disability have access to a lot of things, but I was worried as a child that as I was growing up to be able to face and integrate myself into physical activity. And it's something, again, that we need to focus and make sure that those people have the same opportunity as everyone. Because it does make a big difference. It increase your confidence, increase your self-esteem, and you face the world with the help of the sport a lot easier afterwards.
Just to let you know, I just took this job a year ago, and not long after the job, Benoit calls me and says, at the university system right now, we don't have a Paralympic program. And Benoit says, how do I help you put Paralympic swimmers at the CIS? You know, so that's his vision. That's where he thinks.
It's what we want, and Pierre has done great things too. Swimming Canada was the first organization to fully integrate the Able Body Federation with the para-athletes. And again, Pierre is not with us anymore at Swimming Federation, but how can we make sure that our athletes with a disability can have the same services or same success or same access to the able-bodied athletes? So this is something that I'll fight my whole life, but not only for para-athletes, obviously, and not only I perform in sport, but for anyone that...
Active living.
Active living, exactly.
So Dave, you run programs now in schools and so on. What are some of the barriers that you see, you know, not just as a world-class athlete that you were, but also now as a provider of grassroots programs and physical literacy?
The first thing is we have to provide opportunity for the kids to move and play and learn these skills. So to do that, we have to carve the time for them, whether it's creating more physical education time in class, whether it's creating after-school programs or lunchtime programs, before-school programs, weekend programs. We have to create the opportunity for them to be able to move and learn. Secondly, we have to have the leaders and the people in the communities and in the schools who are really championing this cause and helping these children learn. And thirdly, I think we have to teach them how to move properly. It's not just a matter of putting a ball in a schoolyard and say, go outside and play. We got away with that before because we were outside all the time. We weren't inside 8 hours a day in front of a screen. So what the truth is, we have to teach them to play. We have to teach them to catch. We have to teach them to run. We have to teach them to roll. We have to teach them all these skills so that we can then allow them to play. So it's a balance. So in these schools, what I do is I go in and I carve out the time, I bring in the leaders, and we teach the skills, and then we allow the children to play. So it's done in ways, and I'm very inspired by Dr. Dean's work. who's been tremendous in terms of giving us a structure. We know how to do it, and we know what we have to do. So now it's just a question of doing. So the barriers are created by ourselves. You know, we've invented these barriers, and they're not even high. We just have to step over. We just got to do it.
Yeah, could you imagine if we have a national vision? It'd be fun.
Yeah.
You know, let's be the fittest nation in the world.
Yeah, the participation Olympics. Must be the fittest nation.
Yeah.
What a wonderful thing. John F. Kennedy, an American president, 1960 predicted that this is going to be a problem for the United States. In 1960, 1968, that participation started. We realized we weren't as fit as we could be. We haven't changed. We've actually gone the wrong direction with all. We need to provide to our children, and it's a low hurdle. It's just getting active. I mean, we live as just-in-time people where, you know, who walks to school anymore? I did. Yeah, there you go. There you go. There's some. You know what? In one generation, our children have stopped walking to school. You know how many steps that is? 2,000 steps a day they lose. Yeah. 2,000 steps a day from not walking to school because of a white van. That doesn't exist.
And when
we're in the safest culture.
And when you were young, it was uphill both ways.
And I live in Winnipeg, 6 feet deep of snow.
That's right.
But the important thing is, we may not bring back Pied Pipers and walk our kids to school again, but we do have to think about both structured and what David's talking about, unstructured play. Yeah. We've spent a lot of money on playgrounds that sit idle, and let's get out there. Let's go there. Let's actually make the time. It's not want to be active. It's not should be active. It's must be. And we have to shift our culture from want to, should do to must do. And that's critical. Please make that happen.
And I think that's so important. And I think it's important to recognize everybody's busy. Everybody's overloaded. I recently retired from skiing and went to school full time, and I forgot to be active. I'm gonna just lay it out there. I was trying to write my papers, I was trying to do a million things, and suddenly I started to feel crappy. I was grumpy and
mentally, yeah, you didn't feel
emotionally,
good. Yeah.
mentally, I didn't feel good. I felt terrible sitting at my desk, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I was like, I forgot. I have to stay active, but it can't be an afterthought. And I fell into that trap, and I've been active all my life, and I have the skills to do it. But we have to build it into our culture, and it has to be a part of our day. It's not fair to ask everybody to do everything they do, come home, and then try and squeeze it in at the end of the day. Everybody's overloaded, but it has to become, like Dave said, building it into the schools, making it a part of our culture, like Dr. Dean's saying, so that it's the way we live and it's not an afterthought.
You have to schedule it in your day.
Yeah. Exactly. But into our institutions and into our systems, and have the opportunity at school or
learn it at a young age.
Work, exactly.
Yeah.
And corporate cultures right now, if you put a corporate wellness program in, where you have a fitness center in a corporate environment, and they invest $1 into corporate wellness, for every $1 invested, they return $3 in decreased absenteeism, increased productivity. And that's a corporate setting. We have to understand that. And I don't want that statistic to happen. We now need to invest a very serious amount of time, effort, and money to change our cultural thinking related to this. And if we don't, rest assured, the numbers are going to get worse.
We were just talking earlier before the presentation. Can you imagine if, you get these corporations, got ISO 9000 for quality assurance. Can you imagine if we have the same concept for a corporation that invests in their employees for fitness? I was saying I went to the Perimeter Institute in Waterloo, which is Mike Lazaridis' research in quantum physics. The front lobby is a bike parking lot. Indoor front lobby for their employees. And there's a lot of corporations so it'd be fun to think in the 308 writing, let's find 5 corporations and highlight and celebrate those corporations that do invest in the health and fitness of their employees. I think it's a bunch of little things that make the big things happen, but we got to do that first step.
And it's funny, university teaching at university, we are not good examples. We should be providing to students that go to university time that's not just lunch hour to go work out. At Harvard Medical School in Boston, it is a requirement to participate in fitness activities, otherwise you do not graduate. You mean what you say and say what you mean. And we need to get busy with that and take our kids and our friends out and become active. And it is possible, but no developed country, none, have succeeded yet. It took us 61 years to get Canadians literate, where they can read and write. This problem's not going to go away overnight, but if we don't start now, it's going to be in trouble. We need a physical literacy campaign for all Canadians, starting with programs at the grassroots, but coming from governments from above. There has to be two directions.
I remember even at McGill, you couldn't graduate at McGill if you couldn't swim. It was one of the prerequisites. You know? So I think it's a matter of thinking and leading and being an innovator in programs. Again, part of the discussion earlier, the Australian government in 2006 decided and they said, we know, the Canadians do all the research, the Americans are becoming obese, we know that, they're telling us. We're not going to do research, we're just going to act. And they've added a program, $100 million after school program. And part of the research there, they found that 85% on the first year, 85% of 180,000 kids had never been involved in organized sports before. But the great story on that one is they realized also that they trained 7,500 coaches, which they never thought would affect the change. And these coaches are 20 years old, and tomorrow they'll be the 40-year-old dad who's going to be the little league coach and the club presidents and so on and so forth. So it's a huge investment into a great nation. And we know, you know, how many of your coaches were volunteers? How many of your staff is volunteers? Without volunteers, we can't run this country in sports, you know?
You know, tax credit, I mean, you want to tax credit volunteering? What is that not a good idea? And let's discuss it. I mean,
Right.
Let's give me something for my volunteer activity rather than exploiting a volunteer to the nth degree. We have to be creative in this. And David, have you seen from your programs, what kind of changes do you see just on an anecdotal basis? Like what do you see on the kids as a result of what you do?
We work with the third poorest school in Montreal. And one of the elements of the program is swimming. So we've got 40 kids in the program. There's 15 of them which were kicking and screaming, not kicking and screaming, but you can have the image of the instructor trying to bring them to the edge of the water and they wouldn't want to step in. And just after a few days, you know, a few weeks of the program, the kids are all in the water. And now they're all starting to learn to swim. So if you can learn to swim, then you can then go on and be a swimmer. You could then go to the beach and swim and have fun. You could go to the ocean and swim. It opens so many avenues, not just sport, but in life. And you won't be shy to go to the beach. Let's say you go to the beach and you're with your friends, you don't know how to swim. Well, you pretend you don't know how to swim, you stay on the side, and maybe you go do other activities that aren't quite as healthy. You know,
And the confidence, eh? You see it when you take these kids. They just learn to swim. First time they put their face in the water, wow, like they walk taller.
Yeah.
They go home, you know, with a new, you know, so.
You talk about barriers. I just want to come back a little bit to that. And money is a barrier. And what happens is in this poor school, the way the program is designed, I've raised money. We subsidize the program for after school. It's 20 weeks, 4 days a week. Now, the kids that are in the program pay for daycare to be there. The kids that can't afford to be there, that go home to a mother or father that is unemployed, on drugs, you know, might abuse them, this is the reality. They can't afford to be there. So the kids that I want to help the most, I cannot. You know, so this is a serious problem. You know, so it's also a socioeconomic problem. So we have to create the opportunity, but we can't create opportunity if, you know, the people can't actually do it.
So tell me, Jennifer, tell me about Because I'm a Girl. Because really, sport is a huge tool to build the girls' confidence and to get them to stand tall and be who they are.
Yeah, well, Because I'm a Girl, it's a program, it works in developing nations, and it's all about giving the girls the tools they need to have a successful life. So a big focus of that is education, because girls are the last to go to school if they have an opportunity to go to school at all. So that's the majority of the focus, but we do use sports programs within that to empower the girls and to be able to be confident. And I don't think, I walked into those schools the first time in Burkina Faso in West Africa, and this little girl told me that, I asked them what their dreams were, and they said they wanted to be doctors and lawyers, and one wanted to be the president of her country. And to me, that was amazing because these girls had very little opportunity, but they still had these big dreams. And as a Canadian, as someone who'd been well supported in my life, like Benoit, I had been given endless opportunities, and I dreamt to be an Olympian, and that wasn't really that unique. What was unique was the opportunities I had to get there. And who I am today is 100% because of sport, because of having to face the challenges, having to face myself. The biggest gift I received from sport was knowing my inner strength and knowing how to work on a team and how to carry that into everything I do, whether it's at school, whether it's public speaking, things like that. Sport has equipped me and made me confident and made me feel better as well, and to have that emotional stability. So knowing all this, this is all backed up by science as well, just as Dr. Dean. But I'm talking from a personal perspective, to have those tools in my own life. Imagine if every kid in our community had those same tools, that they could walk around and be proud and be confident. And as girls, we know it's really important to be active, to have that strong self-esteem. Girls are twice as likely to drop out of sport. And one of the reasons as well is that conflict between, being feminine and being athletic. We have to change these ideas and these stereotypes, because being athletic actually gives girls the self-esteem that they need as well.
That's right. So talk to me about solution here, guys. What are some of the, we talk about infrastructures, we could talk about coaching development, what are some of the solutions that you guys see, Dave, maybe? I'll go one by one here.
Again, I'm going to come back to creating opportunity in having the leaders to go out and do it. So we just need to start. We need to activate our communities to be able to start these initiatives. And we have to talk about physical literacy. We have to get people to understand that physical literacy is as important as literacy itself and numeracy. And once we start seeing those on the same level, because when you're born, you move right up until the time that you pass away. When you stop moving, you're not, the quality of life drastically diminishes. So we have to get people to move, and we have to encourage, we have to teach physical literacy in our schools. It has to be as important as those other elements of literacy and numeracy.
There's only 2 provinces that mandates physical education from grade school to high school, which is Manitoba and New Brunswick. The only 2 provinces that mandate physical education for both male and female. There's no reason we don't have everyone doing that. But Benoit, what are some of the solutions?
Yeah, well, I've said it before a little bit, and I'm not a politician. And
Yeah.
but if I was, I would hope that I would think about long term, which is hard sometimes in politics. We all want to be reelected in 4 years, and we want to have great results tomorrow. But because obviously if we invest today in physical activity, we won't see the results tomorrow. We will see them in 20 years. So if I was in your position, I would do everything to try to increase the investment towards physical activity, because the health system will benefit from this in 20 years from now. Well, actually faster than this, but we will see big results in 20 years. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be in one of those positions one day, but I hope to be somehow being able to help, because it makes a big difference. And it's starting with obviously the youth and the adults, because without the adults, the youth won't follow. So it's really to educate the population, how important, and we've said it before, making sure that we become a nation and make it a priority to be active. And it starts, like Pierre said, on top, you guys.
So Jennifer, I mean, we talked about different solutions. How important were your coaches for you and the capacity of having, because that's certainly, there was an article today that talked about one of the major issue in active living is capacity to service our athletes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, if we're talking about solutions, I think as Benoit says, solution has to happen top down, but it has to happen bottom up as well in that grassroots. And you know, everybody knows we need to be active. We see it on TV. We're bombarded with that message. But we need to go beyond knowing and inspire our kids to want to be active. Mm-hmm. And to inspire our kids, we need good quality coaches. We need more Dave Arsenaults on the ground, making it fun, delivering programming that they want to do so that they come home and, as Benoit said, they tell their parents that they want to be active and they want to go for a walk and they want to go outside with their parents. It has to move beyond just a simple message of we need to be active and actually have the inspiring programs on the ground to do it. And as everybody's also, I'll just add one other point, everybody's also saying it has to be top down. And I've done some research papers at McGill on this. And I did some research and I looked across the country, and there are around the world actually, and there's very few countries that correlate from a political, governmental level that sport and health. Sport is health, and health is sport. And if there's one thing, you know, that you can take away from that is that those two have to work together and to channel these resources to uplift both together, because we can't be healthy without sport. And there's a lot of work to do there.
You know what? It reminds me of something. When I moved here in 2005 from Australia, in 2006 we had the Commonwealth Games, and I was asked to go and speak to the federal government in Australia in a panel with the Minister of Sport, Minister of Health, and Minister of Education on how do we bind all three of them to make our country healthier.
But that's unique. There's not many of those discussions happening.
That was kind of cool when you did that.
That's very cool.
I mean, it's a perfect comment, and think this through. We need seamless integration between education, recreation, and sport. Healthcare is one thing, but the new health is actually education, recreation, and sport. Just think it. I mean, $5 billion, I'll give you the numbers. $5 billion per million Canadians is what we spend on healthcare, every province. $5 billion per million. In education, recreation, sport, it's just $2 billion per million. That's it. This one should come up to $1 billion or more added into it. Where are we going to get that money? Don't take it away from healthcare. We need extra money. I'm a supporter of even levies. We have an enviro levy in almost every province, 2 cents a plastic bottle. Why not a physical activity levy? Why not a drive-through tax? We have to think about things in a different way. Otherwise, decisions are going to be made for us uncomfortably into the future. We either pay me now or pay me later. And the pay me later, I work in a hospital, is happening now.
Just 30 seconds before
Let's do
closing.
some questions.
We're just, you know, On the Podium is a great program, but On the Podium will never be as successful as if we own the municipalities and invest at the grassroots, get the sparkles in these kids' eyes at the bottom up. And these kids all over the country inspires our children, but we need to also have access to facilities and bring the facilities in. So,
I have to run to another meeting, but
Yep.
I wanted to just make a couple of comments. If we really want to be bold about this, I view, you're talking about developing the kids side of this, which is incredibly important. But when we get into the workplace, the way the workplace operates today is driven by a number of factors. 2 key ones. We need to look at incorporating physical time into employment standards.
100%.
We also need to look at how we negotiate our trade agreements to incorporate into that employment standards that level the playing field across countries so that we can afford to have people exercise and do their work. If we really want to be bold, that's where I think we have to go to keep adults in that physically fit mold.
Make that motion tomorrow.